All right, I think we will get started. I think we might have a couple more folks joining us a little bit late, but I don't want to hold us up. So I just want to say welcome to the Lone Tree Art Center's virtual Spark presentation. We're really thrilled to be with you here today. My name is Lee Chandler. I am the marketing director here at the Lone Tree Art Center. And before we start with Maureen's presentation, I would like to thank our sponsors for this program: Charles Schwab, Morningstar Senior Living, Belco, Merrick, the National Endowment for the Arts, Colorado Creative Industries, and the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District. While we won't have social time after the program today like we normally do, this program is going to be interactive, so please participate if you feel comfortable. If you would rather not speak out loud, you can type whatever you'd like to say in chat or send a message to me, the host, in the chat, and I'll say your answer out loud. And if you don't want to be seen on screen, you can feel free to turn off your video. So now for the presentation. We are going to Morocco today with one of our beloved presenters, Maureen Holland. Maureen is a longtime usher of ours and has been involved with a lot of our community impact programs, including Spark and our School Ambassador program. If you've been with us before, if you've gone to Egypt or to Vietnam with Maureen, you know that you're in for a treat. So please welcome Maureen Holland.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum is a traditional greeting in Morocco, and the typical response would be alaikum assalam. Say that with me, alaikum assalam. So welcome to another Spark Travel Show with me. This time, as Lee mentioned, I'm sharing some of my adventures in Morocco. So I always like to begin with locating the country that we're talking about. So on the lower portion of the right-hand side of your screen is a map of Morocco. Does anyone know the continent on which Morocco resides?
Africa.
It is. It is in the northwest corner of Africa. It's right across the way from Spain, and it's bordered by two bodies of water, the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. It also is bordered with two countries, Algeria and a disputed land area called the Western Sahara. So that kind of gives us a little bit of feel of where we're talking about. Some of the cities of Morocco are very well known. Thanks to the movie Casablanca, that city is probably well known to many of us. Also, Marrakesh was mentioned in a 70s era song. And all of a sudden, my view just went totally, did we lose? Oh, somebody else was screen sharing.
Yeah, can you share your screen again, Maureen, please?
Yes, hold on. It's going to take me just a minute to get this reset up. Let's see. Okay. Oh gosh, just a second. Okay. Okay. No. Are we on, Lee?
Nope, we can't see your screen. I think you just.
All right, hold on just a minute. I don't know what's going on here. Join the conversation, Zoom meeting. Okay, let me see. Oh dear. Here, screen share, Keynote.
Still not seeing it.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, but I don't think I'm in it yet. I can't find it.
We can see your presentation. There you go. There you go.
Aha! Are we back?
We are.
Okay, that's never happened to me before. That's kind of interesting. Anyway, rather than really share a lot about the cities and towns that we visited, today I'm going to talk more about the culture and the people of Morocco. So when you think of the word culture, what do you think of? What comes to mind?
Oh, clothing, habits, food, music, work, religions, all that stuff.
All of that stuff. Culture really refers to the way of life of a group of people. And if you think about the United States, do we have any one culture for everyone who lives in the United States? No, we're very diverse. It depends on the region that we live in or even the state that we live in. We have different traditions that we share. And that's true in Morocco as well. Most of the people of Morocco are of Arab or Berber descent or a mixed Arab Berber, but there's also French, Roman, Jewish, Spanish influences on their traditions as well. While we were in Morocco, we had the wonderful opportunity to be invited into numerous homes. So I'm going to be sharing some of those experiences with you. Some of them, most of them are rural, some of them are urban. And I'm also going to touch very briefly on the changing role of women in this predominantly Muslim country. All right, let's take a look at this first picture. What do you see the man doing in this photograph?
Pouring tea?
You're right on. He is pouring tea. Rather than using mugs or cups, what is he pouring the tea into?
Looks like beer cans, but it's probably glasses.
Oh, wonderful. That's exactly right. He is pouring the traditional sugared mint tea into these beautiful glasses. And I was so taken with this custom that I had to buy for myself a little nickel teapot along with a set of glasses. So if you ever come to my house for a Moroccan dinner, I promise to serve you tea, Moroccan tea. However, don't expect me to be quite as skillful as this gentleman in raising it up so high. What do you notice about the background or the people in the photograph? You might notice that he's wearing a fez hat, that colorful red hat, and his robe has a lot of embroidery, much like my caftan has the embroidery on it. And I'll stand up for you to see it a little bit, which is just really pretty. The woman behind him is wearing another traditional robe, and she has on pink leather slippers. Well, this is a very traditional welcome, whether you're going into a home or a business or perhaps a restaurant, or in a riad, which we'll talk about later. This is the traditional Moroccan welcome of pouring the mint sweet tea for the people coming into their home. So now I'm at a Berber farm. This was our first home visit, and we were visiting a farmer and his wife and young daughter. And the photograph on the left, I'm standing outside their home, and right behind me, you see kind of this clay bubble. What do you think this clay bubble might be?
An oven?
Yes, it is. It's an outdoor oven where they're going to bake their bread. The picture on the right is the Berber farmer's wife, and she is preparing again that traditional tea to serve to us. Look at her hands, and you see that white, kind of tall mountain cone shape. What do you think that could be?
Sugar?
It is. It's a solid block of sugar. And I don't know how well you can see, but in her left hand, she is holding a chunk of that sugar, which she'll put into the teapot to sweeten the tea. And when I say sweet tea, I mean super, super sweet. Sweeter than anything I've ever had over here. So even in rural areas, you can see this custom of serving the mint tea to their visitors is quite common. Behind this woman, you can see her kitchen. She does have a modern refrigerator, but all else in her kitchen is rather old-fashioned. She makes use of every inch of space in her kitchen. She has open shelving, and on the countertops, she has ingredients and things that she might need. She cooks on a little stove top. Other than that, she might cook in her outdoor oven. One of the very few cities that I'm actually going to show you is that of Chefchaouen. I'd never heard of Chefchaouen before I went to visit there, and it turned out to be my favorite of all places to visit. Looking at this picture, what are some of the things that pop out at you?
The colors.
Yes, what color really dominates this scene?
Blue and red.
Yeah, you see the red tiled roofs? That is Spanish influence because many Spaniards fled Spain and came and lived in Morocco for a while. So you can see there's going to be the Spanish influence of the red tiles. Blue, you mentioned. Why so many of the buildings are washed in the color blue? Any ideas?
Keep it cool.
I hadn't thought of that. I think that's a great idea. Some people have said, well, it reminded them of the sky, or maybe it was a very calming color. When I asked our guide about this, he said that in the 1930s, a lot of countries, especially right around the Mediterranean area, were suffering from the plague, which was caused or a sickness which was caused by mosquitoes. And they felt that like the blue wash on the building deterred the insects from coming into their area. Whether this is true or not, it has become a tradition, and Chefchaouen is now known as the Blue City. Chefchaouen has a wonderfully old preserved medina. A medina is a walled city. Next to the medina is a modern city that has grown up as well. It's very westernized and modern with cars and buildings. We stayed just outside the Medina. Inside the Medina, it was a fun place to explore. The photograph on the left is an old Portuguese Casbah. I'd always heard the phrase, take me to your Casbah. Well, a Casbah is a fort of such. So here we have a fortified building within a city that is fortified by a wall. It was kind of fun. Also within the Medina are these wonderful restaurants, a huge open marketplace called a souk, and many winding little cobblestone streets that dead end in neighborhoods. Now you can't see all of the picture on the right because it's blocked by some of our pictures, but what you notice is their homes are not single family homes that stand apart. They are connected, much as a duplex or quadplex might be. These homes all share walls with one another. Okay, so let's go a little deeper into this neighborhood. And here on the left, you can see this beautiful blue door. What do you notice about the door itself besides being blue?
Looks very heavy.
Yes.
And it's arched.
It is. That's typical Moorish architecture, having that archway, and maybe they took that from the Roman influences. How is it decorated around the lintel?
I think those are Arabic symbols. I don't know. And I see the two hands up there, one in each corner. I don't know what that means either.
You're right. A lot of geometric designs, and I think you might be right in that they are Arabic. Yes, what were you going to say?
No, that was all.
Okay. Now let's talk about the hands. I asked the same question. I asked Abdul, our guide, why do I see these hands not only on doorways, but I had seen them as we were walking through the Medina in various places. And he told me the legend of Fatima's hands. Now, Fatima was the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad. And when she was a woman and had 2 grown sons of her own, they were getting ready to go off and fight in a tribal war. And she had just freshly hennaed her hands. If you look at the picture down on the bottom right, you can see that this is a way of painting their hands. And eventually it dries, but she had just freshly painted her hands. So as she embraced her sons to say goodbye and wish them well in this tribal confrontation, she embraced her sons and left her handprints on the shoulder blades of her sons. Many, many months later, after many men were killed or maimed, her 2 sons came back alive and unharmed, and many attributed their wellness and their success to the handprints that Fatima had left on their shoulder blades. And so the handprints are very common good luck symbol over there. And you see it not only on the doorways, but you see it in a lot of jewelry. This is a necklace that I purchased, and they call this a hamsa, and it is referring to Fatima's hands. I just love that legend. The official religion in Morocco is Islam, and about 98-99% of all Moroccans are practicing Muslims. But Morocco also has freedom of religion there, and so there are pockets of Christians and Jewish quarters as well. Let's talk a little bit about clothing. These 2 pictures kind of feature some men, very typical clothing that you might see in Morocco. Look at the picture on the left first. How are these 2 men dressed? Well, they're wearing robes, aren't they? They're wearing hooded robes, and they come in different colors. These happen to be stripes. But one, rather than having their hoods up today, one is wearing the straw hat and the other one is wearing kind of a knit cap. And behind them, you can see on the street, others are wearing Western clothes of just trousers and jackets and shirts, and even looks like a baseball hat there. The man on the right looks very different, doesn't he? He's in a blue robe, and it doesn't have a hood. Instead, on his head, he's wearing a turban. He is a part of a group called Tuareg. They are a minority ethnic group that live in Morocco and other areas in Africa. Tuareg refers to a group of nomads, so they move from place to place. And because he's dressed in this blue robe, he's referred to as blue man. And part of the reason is because his robes are dyed with indigo, and the indigo actually stains his skin blue. And that's where we get the term blue men. Let's take a look at how some of the women are dressed. Okay. How do you see some of the women in this picture dressed?
Long robes and head coverings.
Very conservative, yes. The women on the left are Arab Muslims, and they are wearing the robes, also hooded, and they are completely covering their hair with the scarves, very traditional. The women on the right are also Muslims, but they are also Berbers. In the olden days, perhaps the Romans, when they first came to this area, saw these groups of nomads and referred to them as barbarians. So the name Berber is kind of a slang version of this barbarian. Berbers refer to themselves as Amazigh people. Amazigh means free people. These two women are Berber women, and they are wearing a wraparound skirt. Traditionally is always striped. They are also wearing conservative clothing, but they have on blouses or sweaters, and they also have head coverings, but you'll notice the woman in the pink sweater, she has a scarf on, but her hair is not completely covered. And the woman behind her has on a traditional Berber hat. Yeah. So we were fortunate to have a young Berber woman come and talk to us a little bit about it. And she was showing how to dress as a traditional Berber woman. Here you can see the red and white striped cloth, which is a wraparound skirt. And she's getting ready to put more like a shawl over the top of one of our group. And this is the most common and the oldest pattern that the Berber groups have. And then you see the straw hat down there with the colorful little tassels. In addition to talking about how Berber women are dressed, she also touched on the changing role of women in Morocco. You can't quite see all of the princess, but down below on the right is King Mohammed VI and his beautiful princess, Lala Salma. And Lala Salma was highly educated. She became an engineer before she married the man to become prince. And she's had a great influence on him. And he has made many changes within his country. And now women are encouraged to get higher education, to attend universities, and even have careers outside the home. What I found really unusual is that women can even have prenup agreements with their husbands-to-be, and making their husbands agree that they will not take on additional wives without the consent of this wife in which they're betrothed. So unlike many conservative Muslim countries, these women can even divorce their husband and are able to keep the house and children. Now, of course, women in urban areas are more progressive than those in the rural areas. But we did visit one women's co-op in a rural community, and they were helping these divorced or single ladies by having them learn how to make couscous and cookies and selling them in a bakery. Up until this time, divorced women had very little choice other than to return to their father in disgrace or live in poverty. So the role of women is changing in Morocco. It just takes a bit of time. Now visiting a home visit in an urban setting, I'd like you to meet Kenza. Kenza is the woman sitting to our left, and she is a second-year medical student at the university. And next to Kenza is sitting a French foreign exchange student that's living with her family. And to the right, you can see Kenza's father. Kenza's father is a retired import-export businessman. Her mother also brought in money to the family, but in the traditional old way, she worked out of the home and did embroidery piecework. Kenza's home is quite spacious. It's different than the Berber farmer's home that only had 2 rooms. Kenza's house has 3 bedrooms, a kitchen, and even an indoor bathroom. It also has 3 salons, like the one pictured here. We might call it a living room. They use their salon as a dining room as well. So you might wonder why they need so many salons or living rooms. Well, Kenza has 2 older brothers, and they are married with families of their own. And during Ramadan or other religious holidays, the extended family comes to stay with the parents to celebrate the holidays. They will sleep on the couches that you see all around the edges of the room. And can you imagine 30 people all staying together in this home for the holidays? I'd go nuts. Now, in stark contrast to Kenza and her family, here is a nomad family. Many Berbers still prefer the nomadic way of life. They travel and they set up tents for temporary stays in an area. They're usually sheep and goat herders, and sometimes camel herders. And they make their living by raising these animals and then selling them at markets. Sometimes they will barter or trade for goods they need, like sugar, flour, salt, and other necessities. Curiously, there's a strange square object on the ground to the left of their tent. What do you think that might be?
It looks like a solar panel.
It not only looks like it, it is. And I was quite shocked that this primitive group living in this makeshift tent has a solar panel, but they use it to charge up their cell phone. And they use their cell phone to keep track of changing weather, to find out where these sheep and goat markets might be being held on what days, and keep track of other important information. Let's take a look inside their tent. What do you notice about the inside of their tent?
It's pretty primitive.
It really is. You can see the dirt on the floor, and you can see that basin, which still has water in it. The father of this tent camp had just finished taking his bath. You can see the cook stove with the pipe taking the smoke out of the tent. But on the floor, they have blankets, and they sit on those and sleep on those. So it is quite primitive, but I imagine it's something that they can fold up and take with them from camp to camp. Now here's another nomad family. This nomad family is out in the Sahara Desert, and they're staying in an abandoned mud brick home, and they're making that use of that as their temporary home. The older sons are out tending the camels, tending the sheep and the goats, and the women are staying behind taking care of the children, and the grandfather is there as well. A little ways by, we spotted some young kids, and they were out on the desert playing with some homemade little camels. So I was very curious to talk to the children, and it turned out that the oldest boy did speak English. Now, most Moroccans speak Arab, Berber, French, maybe Spanish, but English is becoming more and more common and is taught in the schools. So this boy was telling me that these little camels were handmade by his mother, and he, and you can't really see too well in the picture, 3 other boys are all playing with these little camels. And I just really wanted to bring one home with me. I thought it was so unique and special. And he didn't want to give up one of his toys, but I finally offered him some dirham, I think 10 dirham, which might be about 80 cents of our money. And he gladly gave me one of his camels to bring home. I thought it was a special, special souvenir. Well, let's talk food. Some of you may have enjoyed Moroccan food before. It's usually served in courses, and the first course is usually a variety of hot and cold salads. What are some of the different ingredients that you see that are featured in these salads?
Tomatoes and cucumbers are the only ones I recognize.
Oh, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. You're right. Tomatoes and cucumbers are very common, along with green peppers and sweet potatoes and chickpeas and eggplant. Just about any root vegetable you can think of could be used in a salad. Okay, soups are often served as first course also, and they're usually pureed vegetable soups, but that's usually during cooler weather. For the main course, the most common dish we found was the tajin. The tajin is pictured there on the left. It's basically a clay pot that has a lid, and inside they put meat, in this case chicken, along with vegetables and sometimes fruit and spices, and they put it over a cook stove or an open fire, and it slowly cooks the meat over several hours. And it's has a really unique flavor because of the spices they use. They often use saffron, cinnamon, cumin, ginger, cilantro, and lots of ground red pepper. It's not really spicy like we think of maybe Indian food or Mexican food, but it has a lot of flavor to it. The picture on the lower right, I think you can guess at. What do you think the picture shows on the lower right?
Carrots and
Carrots.
zucchini, chickpeas and potato.
And it's served on a bed of what?
Couscous.
You are right. I was expecting people to guess rice, but you are exactly right. Couscous is a staple in the Moroccan home, and they usually make it by hand. They have a large basket that's like a colander, and they would mix their flour and water into kind of a thick paste, and they would shake and mix this until they form the little pearls that are the couscous. And couscous was huge over there, and most families would make it on Friday, getting ready for their Friday dinner all through the weekend and as long as it would last. So they'd make huge quantities. Usually the meat that's served is chicken or beef, and sometimes lamb for special occasions. Pork is very rare due to their religious restrictions. The picture on the left, I think, is just such a pretty picture. These are the spices that are sold in the supermarket. And please don't ask me how they make those perfect cones and they don't fall apart. I have no clue. But I know everywhere we went in the souks, we would see these beautiful cones of different colors of spices, and it was just wonderful. Well, Morocco also is built along the shores of the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. So seafood is also another common dish that you will see in many parts of Morocco. Here we stopped at a little town called Oudlou, and we were served fresh shrimp, fried fish, and calamari. And there were many different sauces that we tried that really brought out the flavor of the seafood. It was really wonderful. To end their meal, they often served the fruit that was in season. So here in the top left, what fruit were we served at Oudlou?
Oh,
Oranges, bananas, pomegranate.
Yeah, I hadn't tasted a pomegranate since I was a little girl, and these did not disappoint. They were the sweetest pomegranates I had ever tasted. Along with fresh fruit, often we were served plates of dates, apricots, dried apricots, or dried figs. Down below on the right, you can see a specialty dessert. This is called Joahara, and it's made of fried pastry, sweet custard cream, and toasted almonds on top. It actually reminded me a little bit of baklava, and it was really delicious. Well, a big part of the daily meal is bread. Bakeries are very common, and they're a staple in every city, town, and village. The picture on the left is flatbread being sold by a vendor. The one on the right is a woman and her son baking their flatbread in one of those outdoor clay ovens. In this picture, you see a village baker. People in the village bring their bread, roll, and cookie dough to be baked in this communal oven. And the man spends all day putting the dough into the oven and banking it with the wood to keep it a certain temperature, and then taking it out when it's at the perfect peak of doneness. And later, the villagers will come and pick up their baked goods. How do they know which ones are theirs? Well, each woman has a special cloth that is their colors or their special unique design, and she will recognize that cloth to pick up her baked goods. But can you imagine that baker doing that all day long, standing almost in the oven itself? It must be terribly warm, especially in summertime. Would you want to do that? I don't think so. This was a serendipitous moment. We were just leaving Rabat, which is the capital city of Morocco, and we happened to see this activity going on in a forest. So we pulled off our little tour bus and got out to investigate. So before I tell you exactly what's going on, I want you to look at the tree on the left and see if you can guess what kind of tree you think that might be.
Cork.
Boy, we have someone who's really with it today. I am just amazed you guessed that. You're exactly right, it is. And you can see where some of the cork has been stripped off the tree. So the men have come, taken some of the cork to make different products. Also in the forest, men are collecting acorns to be able to sell. They're having picnics. These are families from Saleh. Saleh is the twin city of Rabat, like St. Paul, Minneapolis are twin cities. Saleh and Rabat are twin cities. And these are people that are just out family time on a Sunday morning afternoon. And we saw boys riding bicycles and riding donkey carts. And we saw a woman baking flatbread. You can just barely see her here preparing the bread to put over the fire. And she will sell it to other families. And next, down in the bottom of the picture on the right, you can see the Tajin. It's already cooking over the fire, and she's got the kettle on for the green tea. And what I really liked about this picture was not only did it show an authentic activity in which the Moroccans were engaged in, but you can even see the smoke rising up from the fire. I thought my husband did an incredible job in this photograph. So what do you see this man doing? We're going to be kind of switching here to some livelihoods of people in Morocco.
Is he plowing?
He is, but rather than using a tractor or farm machinery, he's using a wooden hand plow being pulled by a horse and a donkey. And we were told that many Moroccans in agriculture prefer hand tools because it allows more people to have jobs. Plus, the tractors require gasoline, which is very expensive over there, and they are harder to find parts or repair. So they prefer doing things the old-fashioned hand way. 40% of all Moroccans engage in some kind of agriculture. And here you can see some of the wonderful vegetables that are grown, the turnips and eggplants and zucchinis, and you can't see all of it, and squash, just wonderful. Morocco is really unique in that it's one of the few Arab countries that actually grows enough food to feed all its people. We also visited a special art school. This school was training young boys and girls in the traditional art forms of from their past. And here on the left, you can see two boys, and they are learning how to make the geometric drawings that you see on the wall behind them. These geometric drawings are seen in homes, they're seen in business buildings, they're seen in tabletops, very, very common. So here's where it all starts, keeping this art form alive. And here are some young women, and you can tell by a couple of them who have their heads down a little bit that they're feeling a little shy in having their picture taken. But once we showed them their picture on our iPhones, they were really into it, and everybody wanted their picture taken. These young ladies are learning the art of embroidery, and you can see some of the beautiful work they've done behind them. And these girls are working on some practice stitches at this point. They were so sweet. In addition to the geometric drawing and the embroidery, the school also teaches leather craft, tin art, which is just incredible over there, intricate wood and plaster carving that is prized on many of the doors and in many of the buildings that we saw. Taking a peek inside a riad, you can see my husband on the left, and he is standing in front of this beautifully carved wooden door. That's an example of that traditional artwork that is common everywhere in Morocco. We're staying in a riad. A riad is an old home that was built around a courtyard. So all of the rooms look down into the courtyard. It has since been changed into like a bed and breakfast. The picture on the right side shows you just a little small part of the courtyard. And you can see the beautiful tile work, the beautiful plaster carvings that are on the wall, the beautiful woodwork, and even the embroidery work that those women were learning how to do. And this is not uncommon. We saw this just everywhere. It was so beautiful. This is in the morning salon. This is where we ate our breakfast. And behind me on the wall, you can see some of the plaster work that's done and some of the tile work. And I'm standing with my friend, Nahima. Nahima was not only our breakfast server, but she also was my attendant in a hammam. A hammam is a Turkish style bathhouse, complete with sauna and massage. And I have to tell you, you can't be shy because Nahima washed me from the top of my head to the tip of my toes. And when she was done, she gave me this wonderful massage all over using argan oil. And the steam from the sauna was just heavenly. And as she was giving me a massage, she was singing to me. And instead of singing in our traditional way, she was using her tongue, and I cannot mimic it. Because instead of using her tongue to go up and down, she was going from side to side and making some clicking sounds and some other sounds. It was just wonderful to hear. About 40% of all Moroccans have jobs in tourism. They either work as drivers or guides, or they work in places like this, in riads, hotels, restaurants, or in souvenir shops. Here's a peek into that beautiful tile work that we were seeing. We're now inside what they call a Zelich Factory. Zelich is an old art form of glazed terracotta tiles, and they've been making them the same way for centuries. Look at the hand tools that these two men are using. They are hand chipping each tile piece by hand. And when they're finished, they will be made into these incredible products such as tabletops, fountains, pottery, and much, much more. Here's a gentleman using those glazed pieces, and he's turned them upside down. He's using a pattern, and he's laying each piece by hand in the specific pattern. I don't know how he can see what he's doing when it's all upside down, but he does an incredible job. When he's finished laying all the pieces, they'll cover it with resin or a clay mixture, and it'll harden and keep all the pieces in place, and then they'll turn it over for the tabletop. Personally, I don't think I could sit that way for 8 to 10 hours at a time, but I was quite impressed with his work. This is a fun photograph. What do you notice happening in this picture?
The truck is way overloaded.
Doesn't it look like they're just gonna all fall off the back? Both my husband and I just were really taken with this photograph. I love that behind this field, you can see the city. You can even see a car parked along the street. And in the front, you see sheep in this picture, but there were sheep and goats. It's a sheep and goat market. And you see many people come there to buy and sell their sheep and goats. And the ewes with the lambs or the female goats with the kids were highly prized and sold for the best prices. Well, speaking of sheep herders, we have a special visit from my friend and husband. And this is Jim wearing his traditional jalaba to visit with you for a minute.
Assalamu alaikum, Maureen.
Alaikum assalam.
Oh, sorry, I didn't notice you. I was over there pondering. I lost my pet rock. I cannot find my rock. I looked all over for my rock. Where did Morocco?
Oh,
Sorry about that. Welcome to the sheep and goat farm market. My little Habibi and my friends on Zoom. Before I sat down, I was on my way to get my sheep sheared. I was going to the Baba shop. Sheep can be dangerous if they are not sheared. Once while I was tending my flock, I was suddenly surrounded by sheep and goats. It was a ambush.
oh,
Then they attacked me. One goat led the attack. He was a good fighter. They called him the Karate Kid. I actually ended up going to the hospital, but luckily I was only grazed. So, did you see that hay truck? Did the Marine show you that hay truck? I heard the authorities arrested the driver, but they eventually let him out on bail.
oh.
Well, I must go now. As we say in the sheep and goat market in Casablanca, here's looking at you, kid.
I'm back. All right, we're talking about livelihoods. And what do you think these men are doing with those long poles? No idea? Let me,
Olives.
you're right. They are knocking the olives out of these olive trees. Watch the photograph in the middle of my husband trying this. We each took a turn knocking the olives down. And as you can see, some leaves and twigs come down as well. So the workers not only have to knock the olives off the tree when it's time to harvest, but then they have to sort through everything to pick out the leaves and the twigs before they can press the olives into their oil. Now, I don't know if you can see the picture on the right because mine is kind of covered up by some of the people that I'm seeing on my screen. But this is a roadside vendor, and he is using plastic bottles of every kind to sell his olive oil to people that are coming by. And he even has Coca-Cola bottles there that are filled with olive oils. And on top, there are hanging some bags of nuts. And those, I don't know if you can see that, but the bags of nuts contain jojoba nuts, and they can be cracked open and pressed. And the jojoba oil is used in face and hair cosmetics and sold and exported. Well, texports are an important export of Morocco. And here, this man on the left is using a loom, and it's controlled both by his hands and his feet. Watch carefully as he works this loom. It's incredible, isn't it? The textiles are beautiful. They look like they're made of silk, but they're actually made from the agave plant. And when you strip the leaves of the agave, inside are these very soft and pliable fibers. You can see me in this picture here holding up some strands of the fibers, which are twisted together to make the threads that are used to dye and then are used on the loom to make these bolts of cloth. Pretty incredible. Now here's a different kind of farm than we saw earlier. Does anybody know what these trees are?
Coconut palms?
Date palms.
They're definitely palm trees, aren't they? They are date palms, and dates are very commonly grown in Morocco and exported. And the tall palm tree you see in the middle is the male palm tree, and it pollinates all the female palm trees that you see around it. So one male tree can pollinate 50 female trees. And on the lower right, you can see the date farmer, and he is getting ready to irrigate the palm trees. Because they're in the desert, he has to be very careful about how much water that he allows to flow into his gardens and among his trees. Well, we were there at the peak of the date harvest. So again, another serendipitous moment, we saw this crowd of people pulled over and joined in, and they were selling and buying these huge crates of dates, which I don't know about you, I love dates. So we got to sample many of them. What I didn't know is that Morocco has over 100 different varieties of dates that are grown, but the two best known and probably the two most popular are the medjool and the halawi. This is a unique picture, I think. Anybody want to guess what you're looking at?
Beehives?
I didn't quite hear that, so I don't know if you guessed it or not. This is actually a tannery, and the tannery is in Fez. And we're up on the top roof of a building looking over and down into the tanning process. And you can see the kind of squarish vats on the right side. That is where they are tanning the hides of sheep, goats, camels, cows, any kind of leather that they want to soften and make pliable and make in preparation. The vats on the left side that have colors, they're a little bit, kind of looks like a beehive, doesn't it? A honeycomb. And they have the colors. Those are the vats that they're using to dye the leather pieces that will be made into different products. I was very taken with the colors because the colors are all natural, but the smell was terrible. So we held mint under our noses to be able to watch some of this happening, because they don't use any chemicals in tanning their leather. They use chicken poo and cow urine. And so it really did stink. Now here's a close-up of a man. He's actually climbed into this vat and he is dyeing some of the leather. The leather, the Fassi leather, is highly prized. It's very soft. It's world renowned. So it's an export, but people in Morocco wear it as well. They make purses and jackets, and most of all, they make slippers. And these are Moroccan slippers that my husband purchased while he was in Morocco, and the leather itself is very soft. Now, these probably would mainly be used inside a home rather than outside. Two more artisans that I just had to show you were these two. The one on the left is hand tapping a design on a copper kettle. And the one on the right is using his feet, and he is moving a piece of wood. Can you guess what he's making?
Chess pieces.
Yes, he is carving each little individual chess piece out of wood. Pretty incredible, really. These artisans are very proud to do their craft by hand, or in this case, by foot. Well, let's take a little brief look at music, since I so much like to sing and dance. The men on the left are the blue men that we saw at the beginning of the slideshow, and they are entertaining us when we went glamping or glamour camping in the Sahara Desert. You can see the beautiful tapestries that are in this room and the beautiful rugs on the floor. So it was not like the Berber tent we saw earlier, but it was quite glamorous. These two are playing on a variety of drums and other percussion instruments to entertain us after dinner. The people on the right were out in front of a building that we were visiting, and they too wanted to share their unique African music. I like the little hats that have that twirly thing going around. I think that's fun. We also visited a music school, which, just like the art school, is continuing to teach the younger generation traditional forms of music. This is called Dar Nwana, and it's teaching the traditional form of Berber music. What you see in the hands of the men on the left are double castanets made out of tin or nickel. And the gentleman to our right is playing some kind of really big drum. So just to give you a little portion of what this sounds like and looks like. So rhythm and music is everywhere in Morocco, like it is in most cultures. And the picture on the left, we were in a very fancy, beautiful restaurant, and we were accompanied during dinner by two men playing ouds. And ouds are like a mandolin. They're a 12-stringed instrument, and they're very melodic, very wonderful. After dinner, we were invited by our servers to come up and dance. You'll notice that the women are dancing with other women, and we're kind of just doing rhythmic things. There's no set pattern to our dance, but it was lots of fun. The picture on the lower right is a street musician, and he is playing a 3-stringed instrument, and it's being plucked rather than using a bow or strummed. It's being plucked, and it's called a guanbri. So now, are you ready for a little magic? Watch the picture on the left and see what happens on that piece of white paper.
Oh, wow. It's very interesting. Look, it's magic. It's magic. Look.
You can see it slightly.
I found that just incredible, didn't you? He is painting with watercolors, but instead of with different colors, he's painting with sugar water. And the heavier the concentration of sugar, the darker, when he holds it up over the flame, the darker it will become. And you can see the picture on the right. This is another Tuareg or blue man. And I was so taken with his artistry, and it was just such a unique art form to me that I had never seen before, that of course I had to purchase a painting to bring home and have it framed to hang in my home. And it's something I really treasure because it's very authentic, and we actually saw him making them right before our eyes. Well, here is our last slide of the show. And I couldn't leave without showing a camel on the Sahara Desert. But unlike my adventure in Egypt, these camels did have saddles, and they had stirrups for my feet to fit into. So it was a much more comfortable ride. Now, camels have a really bad reputation about being nasty creatures. Supposedly they spit and they nip or they bite. But this camel that was tethered behind mine was quite the opposite. He was very affectionate. And every time we'd stop to either look at the horizon or do something, this camel would come up and he'd put his head on my thigh, and I would scratch behind his ears and stroke his forehead and down his nose. He was such a little sweetie. So as I ride off into the sunset on my trusty camel in the Sahara Desert, I just want to say shokran. Shokran means thank you. Shokran for participating and watching my slideshow, and I hope you learned a little bit about the people and culture of Morocco. So we're going to stick around, and if you have questions or comments or just want to share some of your reactions, please feel free to join in the conversation.
This was great. Thank you very much.
Well, you did a wonderful job of participating. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
You're welcome.
Really well done. Were you able, can you hear me okay, Maureen?
I can.
Were you able to bring home any of the oil?
I did. I
Okay.
didn't bring the jojoba oil home. I brought home argan oil,
Oh, yeah.
and that was even more precious. And it is another oil that is pressed from seeds, and it's used in hair care and face and makeup and things like that. But it's also used for cooking. It's quite expensive, especially if you buy it over here. But we were able to get some. And we got ours, it's gardenia scented, and it smells wonderful. And it just feels, it just soaks, it doesn't leave an oily feel, it just soaks into your skin.
When did you go?
Actually, it was a while ago. We went for 3 weeks, the end of November, early December in the year 2017. So it's been a little while. It was a lot of fun to revisit my slides or my pictures and kind of recall memories. It's a good thing though that I take journals and write down things, or I would never remembering it all. I have to say too, both myself and my husband celebrated birthdays while we were over there, and their cake is not quite the same thing as our cake, but they really attempted to make our birthdays special while we were on our tour.
Maureen, what's the climate like there? I always think of it as being so hot because of the desert, but you had said that it does get cooler.
Cool is all relative. Okay, this was again late November, and I'd say the average temperature of the day was high 60s, and it may have even reached 70s a couple times. They thought it was very cool. And at night and in the morning, it was much cooler. They were all wearing jackets. But being from Colorado, I found the weather very pleasant. Now, I think had we gone more like in May or June, the weather would have been much hotter because it is closer to the equator. So I imagine it gets extremely hot, and especially if you're out in the Sahara. But there are high Rif mountains and high Atlas mountains, and they actually had snow on top of the mountains.
You were mentioning about the temperament of the camel, and on our travels across the country, we stopped at White Sands National Park, and we had our lunch there. It was very, very, very warm, and of course the white sand made it really warm. But as we were driving away, we saw a gentleman out walking his 2 dogs and his very large, well-behaved camel. It was just amazing to see that. It was certainly not something we were expecting, but he just seemed so docile and, agreeable to just be walked in this vast quantity of sand. It was really amazing.
And was it 1 or 2 humps?
1. So is that a dromedary? Is
Yes,
there a
it is.
difference? Dromedary, right?
And that's what these were as well. They were
Okay.
dromedaries with 1 hump. Mhm.
So this experience riding the camel was better than Egypt.
Yes.
Okay.
It was not my first experience on the camel, but of all my camel rides, I'd say this one was the best. Mhm.
So do you have a place to which you've traveled that you liked the best or would want to return to?
That's almost an impossible question to answer, because each time you explore a new country or a new culture, you just kind of, part of you falls in love with it. I liked Asia. I loved Vietnam. I really did. I enjoyed Hong Kong, but I don't enjoy the 22, 24 hours that it takes to get there. I like Europe. It's easy to get to. People speak English, so it's easy to communicate, and it's still lots of fun. So I don't know how to answer that question. How about you? Where do you love to go?
Yeah, that's very true. But I have to say, of all the traveling that we've done, I'm missing Colorado. It's quite beautiful. So, and we do most of our travel in the CONUS anyway. So we don't really travel overseas much. So for us, it's, which state do you like? But Colorado really, I have to say, is probably the most visually stunning that we have lived in and traveled to. And even here in California, it's beautiful, but a different kind of beautiful. It's hard to describe.
I have to agree with you. I always enjoy traveling, but I'm always so glad to be home, not just because it's home, but the beauty of our state and of our country too. And Colorado has something like 6 different ecosystems here, from the dry desert to the high plains to the mountains to the alpine. So, I mean, you never get bored here. You can always visit something new and wondrous. So.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Hope you loved going to Morocco with Maureen. I know personally I did. It was a lot of fun. So thank you so much, Maureen. And our next Spark presentation will be on May 20th, and we will be looking at some selections from the Lone Tree Photo Show with our very own Janine Madden. So please sign up for that if you haven't already, and hope to see you on May 20th. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Maureen. Great
Thank
show.
you. Oh, thank you all. Thank you all. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.